fantastic. And it is my huge pleasure to now hand over to our three fantastic leads for this breakout. So I'm delighted to hand over to Sophie from Yes Futures, Joe from Football Beyond Borders, and Charlotte from CYP MHC. So over to you guys for the session.
Right, thanks so much, Tish, and it's wonderful to see so many of you here. Thanks for joining us to talk about wellbeing and developing the whole child this morning. Joe, should we start with you? Do you just want to talk a little bit about the working group that you've been part of and what's happened so far?
Yeah. Do we have the slides? So someone share the slides. Is that all right, or should
I can do that now.
All right, thank you. Well, yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Joe. I am head of policy at Football Beyond Borders. Yeah, I've been there for ages now, and I won't take too long with this. I guess, yeah, I've been part of the collective action working group for almost a year now. We've been working with FEA sort of for the last few years, and I'm part of this one. I'm also part of the one about sort of racial equity and education. And what it's great for, I think today we'll touch a bit more about what we're doing specifically. But what it's great for is, as sort of the videos showed, it's a great place for sort of organized collaboration. It introduces you to people in the space that, you know, you may have heard of or may not have heard of. And it's a great space for sharing best practice, talking about our experiences in education and how we're supporting young people's well-being, but also for sort of building connections and building networks across the country. In particular, sort of we are, there's a few things I'm going to talk about today. One of the things we're doing is sort of our work with teachers was sort of really supported by the Collective Action Working Group and the FEA, as well as that we have spent a lot of time just sort of learning in terms of our expansion. We've just moved to the Northwest, and obviously moving regions is something that is, yeah, for some people who've been through it, for others who, yeah, maybe have been in organizations that have been through it, it's quite difficult in terms of making sure that you know, work with the right people, understand the local context of the community, and it's created a really positive space for sharing the best practice and learning on how we do that. I won't spend too much. We meet once a month most of the time, and it's about an hour and a half, and just a really great space, a really safe space actually to talk about struggles and to just learn from others. I'm going to pass on now. We're going to talk a bit more about this work we're doing in terms of developing the whole child, in particular the work we're doing sort of together as, you know, separately, but together in terms of developing well-being of young people. I'm going to pass over now to, I think, Sophie.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, and as Joe started to touch on, we've got three of us in three different organisations here, all working in quite different ways to support young people's well-being. So just going to kind of briefly frame the conversation today by explaining a little bit about what each of us do. So I'm Sophie, I'm Acting Chief Exec at Yes Futures, and our approach to supporting children's wellbeing is all about empowering young people to believe in themselves and discover their personal potential. Yes Futures is founded on the belief that in order to succeed in life, to be a happy child, to be a successful person, that kind of self-belief, that self-confidence is the real kind of crux of that. And so we worked with schools and with teachers to support young people to develop that self-belief. Charlotte, can I move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So for us, there are kind of four foundational building blocks of developing that self-belief, and we call these our Yes Futures talents. So confidence, resilience, communication and self-awareness, and these are the kind of key outcomes of our programs that we work with young people to develop. I'm sure each of you in different organisations, different schools, will have your own kind of approach of what you've identified as the key skills. But these we think are the real kind of building blocks of enabling a young person to go on and develop all the other things we think are really important, like being a leader, being a good team player, you know, whatever it is. And so we run a primary school programme, Finding Futures, and a Rising Futures, our secondary school programme, really centred on these four outcomes. And coaching, I've got as a little star there. Coaching is kind of the golden thread that ties all of this together. That's kind of what we've chosen as our kind of key approach to developing a young person's well-being. And I guess the reason we've chosen coaching for our programs is that it's really about empowering the child to take ownership over their own development, to feel confident about their own well-being, and coaching kind of gives them the skills to do that themselves. And next slide, please, Charlotte. And yeah, I guess teacher wellbeing is something we've realised, and I think it's become more apparent over the last 18 months, is so connected to student wellbeing. And actually, we can't really look at student wellbeing without also being really mindful of teacher wellbeing. And so that's something over the last 18 months we've really concentrated on as well. And so kind of our programme design, we go in and we run programmes in schools, and so we've tried to design our programmes in a way that's really mindful of teacher workload, that doesn't add to their workload. We're not asking them to do loads of unnecessary paperwork. We've designed our programmes to have minimal impact on a teacher's workload. We've also developed resources to support teachers, and actually we've run a coaching programme for teachers as well. So we've started to recognise that in our kind of mission to increase the self-belief of every young person, we actually need to be mindful of kind of the different angles at which to come at that from, and so I've started to think about how we can support teachers to in turn empower students as well. That's it from me. I think, Charlotte, is it back to you next?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much, Sophie. Hi, everyone. My name is Charlotte Rayner, and I'm the Coalition Lead at the Children and Young People's Mental Health Coalition. For those of you that haven't heard of the Coalition before, we're a network of around 240 organisations who all campaign and influence policy on behalf of children and young people in relation to their mental health and wellbeing. So our approach to really centering wellbeing is all around collaboration. It's around bringing our members together, and it's about influencing policy that really places mental health and wellbeing at the centre of what we do. We have 3 strategic priorities at the Coalition, and these shape the work that we do. So that's promotion and prevention, early intervention, and workforce skills and confidence. This month, we published our annual members report, which brings together all of our members' views on what change they want to see in relation to children and young people's mental health and wellbeing. And for us, this will really shape our policy and influencing work as we go forward. Just to give you a very brief overview of what we're going to be focusing on over the next few months and kind of what work the Coalition do, our recommendations kind of cross the areas of education, health and the community. So making sure that mental health and wellbeing are placed at the centre of education through really having wellbeing at the heart of educational recovery, but also the importance of whole school and college approaches to mental health and wellbeing, and how can we make sure that those are implemented nationally. Placing mental health and wellbeing at the heart of support that's available in the community, in community settings, and we've really been pushing for these early support hub models in the community, and hopefully some of you are aware of our Fund the Hubs campaign that we've been running with other organisations, calling for this national network early support hubs to provide early support for children and young people's mental health. And then putting mental health and wellbeing at the heart of our health system, at the heart of specialist services, and making sure that those commitments for the NHS long-term plan for children and young people's mental health are really delivered on, and that they're rolled out, and that actually children and young people's mental health and wellbeing is prioritised within the health system, which is something I think we all know that hasn't really happened over the past few years. But then overarching all of that and coming back to the theme of this is collaboration and wellbeing, and really having that cross-government strategy on mental health and wellbeing. It's something that we talk about so much, knowing that mental health and wellbeing just doesn't sit within one department. Actually, it should cover all areas of government, and that's something we're really pushing for, is that collaboration and that cross-government working. I'll hand over to Joe now.
Right. Hello, everyone, again. Thank you, Sophie and Charlotte. Yeah, I guess I'll talk a bit about the work we're doing at FEB to support young people's wellbeing and mental health. So yeah, our general mission is to support young people who are passionate at football, but passionate about football, but disengaged at school, typically at risk of exclusion. And we work to help them finish school with the skills and grades necessary to successfully transition into adulthood. Yeah, it's a 3-year program. We meet weekly, and it's built around passion, relationships, work in the classroom and football pitch, and one-to-one support and enrichment opportunities. When we talk about skills, we talk about social and emotional skills and metacognitive skills, sort of let a young person understanding their own emotions, and using sort of tools and interests that they find really interesting. So for example, one of the projects we do as a group would be like the perfect penalty. How does Harry Kane prepare himself for like a really high pressure situation? And how can that link to your daily life, or, your experiences at school or beyond or at home? As well as that, another project which we might run might be a project called Be Your Best Self, which is, how does a footballer get a red card and then turn up after a football game and give an interview without, effing and blinding or blaming everyone, and actually, being responsible, being present, being aware of their own emotion, their triggers, and actually being able to put their best selves forward. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into the sort of more specific work that we do therapeutically. It's something that we've been, with the support of the FEA, I've been doing for sort of 2 years now. If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so for 2.5 years now, we've been running we've kind of extended our one-to-one support, and basically running programs across London, across Manchester, and in the Southeast. We saw that there was a cohort of at-risk students that tended to have sort of social emotional needs that were rejecting traditional therapy, but also on the other hand, also not qualifying for sort of the high needs, CAMS block, and schools and parents and young people sort of were wanting more support in the one-to-one context. And so what we actually did was, with the support of trust funders and a corporate funder, actually started to train up some of our younger staff members as culturally competent sort of one-to-one therapeutic counsellors. We wanted to increase engagement and support young people, by having skilled, trained and culturally competent practitioners who could deliver one-to-one support. And so we work with each group that we work with. There's usually 15 students. 5 of those students are identified by the school or by parents, and are given sort of intensive year-long one-to-one therapeutic support. A lot of these young people are either traditionally rejecting therapy, or are don't qualify for sort of high needs funding blocks, and so don't qualify for therapy. And so we've managed to currently working, and actually what's been really great being part of the mental health wellbeing working group has been, I'm currently working on a report which I'll probably talk to Charlotte about after this, which we're hoping to sort of launch in the new year around, our learnings from delivering therapeutic support to young people who typically, don't access it or are rejecting it, and what we think is best practice from our experiences and what we need sort of more support on. One of the big things I think we think about, and when we're part of these working groups with the FEA, is that there's no way FBB could work with every young person in the country. And so if we can be part of a community and a network of people who we can share best practice and also learn from, and hopefully be able to support young people in the way that they need to across the country, and it doesn't necessarily have to be us, is one of the big kind of drivers for this. Something which is actually launched this year, if we go on to the next slide, please, working with the support of the Fair Education Alliance, has been similar to, I think, Sophie's last point around providing wellbeing support for teachers. We all know that the pandemic has had a multitude of different sort of effects on young people, on teachers, parents, on everyone in society, whether it be bereavement or just the kind of disconnection and the disruption that the pandemic caused. And we heard from our teachers that they wanted a bit of support, and we found it quite odd kind of doing our therapeutic work. All of our therapists, for example, are therapists in the space, counsellors, one-to-one supporters, are offered supervision as a sort of compulsory part of their practice. But teachers who, with tighter school budgets, have had to take a much more pastoral role, and actually there's no sort of space for teachers to ever be supported sort of in a therapeutic manner, or in a reflective manner, or a space for them to sort of just reflect on the relational challenges that they have, and the kind of secondary trauma that they may be picking up because of the amount of trauma that are in rooms. And so this year, with the support of the Fair Education Alliance, actually through a bit of funding, but also kind of research support, we've managed to actually launch a sort of reflective supervision groups across our schools, where they meet monthly. It's typically 5 to 10 teachers that we work with, and it's this built on notion that if we create space for teachers, not only to sort of just talk about what they're going through, but to share best practice and feel supported beyond academic outcomes, we felt that teachers needed to be in a space where they could talk about things they were going through. And it was centered around a notion that developing well-being in a young person you would need to develop the well-being of the key actors in their lives, and having, you know, a young person who's having a really excellent well-being support when the teachers, the parents, and sort of the people around them don't have that support and are having to go through sort of challenges to their well-being, is going to be very, very difficult. As well as that, there's a lot of kind of data that suggests that teacher well-being is linked to high performance, job satisfaction, and a reduction of burnout. And so being able to support teachers through that has been really excellent. Yeah, and that's kind of the work we're doing. And as you can see, 3 different organizations, 2 kind of more service delivery organizations and 1 advocacy sort of policy space. You can get a taste for the way the sort of collective action working groups kind of run, and the way that I'll probably work with Charlotte in the next few months to talk about how we can get our learnings into the best places, and you can see that collaborative space. What we want to do now is actually, if we could just go on to the next slide, please. Great. So what we want to do is actually turn it over to you guys, everybody in this. Oh, it's quite a lot of people in here today. Yeah, we want, basically, I'll put the link. I'll send it in the slide. What we want to do is, we've got a Jamboard, which hopefully everyone should access. We've tested it. If there's any issues, do shout at us. But yeah, we've got this kind of driving question, and we're really keen to hear from you guys around how can we make it a sort of priority of the system. When I talk about the system, the education, the health system, whereby every vulnerable young person has a trusted adult by their side throughout their adolescence. And we will kind of, take this question as you want. When we spoke about it, we talk about how can we make it a priority? What sort of skills does this trusted adult need to have, and what kind of funding mechanisms or services need to be available for this young person, for different young people? For us, we think about sort of vulnerable young people. That is, our bread and butter. However, for many of you, it might be more like whole school approaches. So please don't be, sort of put off by the vulnerable kind of, it could be for any young person there that we believe in. We just really want to hear from you guys in a sort of collaborative manner about how we can make it a priority. What sort of things can we be doing?
If we've got any, Joe, if we've got any questions as Bilkis here, do we wait at the end to ask you, or can we ask you now, or shall we wait because you're in your flow?
I mean, no, I don't mind. You can go now since.
So I love the kind of getting the teachers as training the trainer essentially. How do you get them to commit 60 to 90 minutes every fortnight given their workload?
Surprising. It's actually, I think there's like 3 things. Number 1, we have relationships with these schools, and so they're aware of the work that we do, and so that's like a first point. It's not just like, we're not just turning up to random sort of teachers and schools who've not met us, and so relationship at the heart of everything that we do at FBB. Number 2, I mean, just to put it sort of bluntly, it has SLT support, and so when the SLT are sort of putting things, people are more inclined to do that for, different reasons. And so having that kind of buy-in from SLT is really, really important. And finally, I think people have gone through so much and have been going through so much, especially teachers pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, or within the pandemic. I think if I did it out of it, it's probably a bit wrong at the moment, as I've seen on the news, but that there is a kind of need and a desire for this. So, there is need, and actually at a few of our schools it's oversubscribed, and so we've actually had to limit it to 10. We are actually piloting, and so to go back to your point, it might be that we start doing it monthly, half-termly, if teachers do communicate. But teachers are used to kind of spending 60 to 90 minutes after school on trainings and whatnot, so we just kind of fit it in with those schedules already. So that's how. If you want kind of more specific, I can introduce you to Stefan, who is supported by the FEA to do this, who could probably give you a bit more information on what we're doing and how we kind of get the buy-in.
Thank you. Thanks. I will do. I'll get in touch.
Yep.
Sorry, everyone, just a quick note that the room is going to be closing within 2 minutes, but there's been an issue with timings. So the room will close, but then it will be readmitted. You'll be readmitted back into the room after that, and we'll have another 10 minutes to think about the question. So yeah, please don't panic if you get kicked out of the room. You'll be brought back in straight after. But please do share any other questions that you have, or any other thoughts on the question that we've given. I'll put the question into the chat as well.
I can see there's a lot of people already on the Jamboard. So what we'll do is when we come back for the final 5 minutes, we'll just read out a couple of bits of feedback. But yeah, for now, if anyone has any questions, do feel free to to ask them, either in the chat bar, or you're welcome to turn off your mic and turn on your mic. And okay, I like that. Invest in youth work and make it a career, not a part-time insecure. I agree a lot with that one. Whoever put that there, I think for us, it's always been a bit of a weird thought that can you relink the Jamboard? Yeah, we can. But yeah, weird that like TAs, for example, are given, you know, the most at-risk students, but are usually not trained up, you know, haven't worked in education, work through agencies. And I think that's part of the work we're doing now, taking football coaches, youth workers, and giving them sort of therapeutic and counselling qualifications to match with their cultural competencies to be able to support the most at risk. So that's a really great point. Make it everyone's responsibility in a school, not just a wellbeing lead. I love that, whoever put that there.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of people talking about including more in teacher training, a better CPD, and I think that is, yeah, just so interesting. I tried to try and group some of the themes we've got coming out together, and yeah, I think that piece around the CPD, and like you were saying, Joe, making sure that it's not just one wellbeing champion in a school, like it's not something that can be done in a silo on its own. Actually, it really needs to be integrated within, you know, general school practice.
The CPD. Yeah, robust, compelling evidence to the long-term difference it makes. Yeah, I think in cost cut as well, that also helps for the government. But yeah, that's a really good point.
Hi, I've got a question from me too. Can we vote up some of these? Because for me, there's some that I think are much higher priority and will be more impactful than others. So is there a way to kind of like show that these are the things that need to be worked on first?
I am not sure, but I think maybe if we group them together and then maybe prioritize them in order, we can put them in order at the end when we come back. I think this room's going to close in 25 seconds. So when we come back, we'll have them in groups and maybe we can organize them from sort of left to right. Yeah, if we just put in the chat bar when we come back, sort of which ones you think are the highest priority, and we'll see if there's sort of consensus along that, and then see what we can do going forward.
Great, and thanks everyone so much for your understanding. Huge apologies, as Charlotte said, the room timing was set up a bit wrong, so in about a second we're going to pull.
Great, so welcome back everyone. Sorry about that disruption in the breakout rooms, but we have worked it out, the timings, and we're just going to be given the option to rejoin those breakout rooms to continue the discussion for a further few minutes. Then we'll come back and you'll get to choose the next breakout rooms. So what you should have now is an option appearing for a room to join if you just want to go ahead and choose on that, and we'll see you in there.
If you can't see it, if you click on breakout rooms at the bottom, a box should appear and you can choose wellbeing, skills or attainment. So go back into the room that you were just in. And apologies for this. If you're having problems, you can again put the name of the your name and which one you want to go into in the chat, and we can help you out. But you should be able to see the little breakout room icon at the bottom and choose wellbeing, skills or attainment. And if you can see,
Mobilize the retired population. Interesting. Who put that there? I actually would love to hear what you mean by that. If you're here, if you don't mind.
Joe, that was me, Lorna.
Hello, Lorna. Yeah, could you talk a bit more? That's the first time I've heard that.
Well, if we're looking for consistency and, you know, wellbeing support, we've got a lot of people who have retired, who've had careers in all sorts of different industries, etc., who could be trained and could be engaged in working with young people, providing them with whether they're ex-sports people or, you know, in different industries. I think there's a real potential of people in the communities that the young people are part of to engage with other generations. And particularly, we're told all the time we've got this aging population. Well, let's engage them because it'd be good for them as well.
Interesting point. Thank you very much, Lorna. Yeah, that's the first I've heard that one, but it's a very, very interesting suggestion. Cool. I think we're going to struggle to kind of like organize. I mean, I can see Charlotte and Sophie really trying to organize that.
There's so much on there, but it's great to see so many different thoughts. There's a couple on there I'd love to hear a little bit more about as well. I'm really interested in this point on like evidencing the academic impact of soft skills and well-being, and that's something I'm always in kind of two minds about, is whether we should, that's the kind of route to showing the importance of well-being, or actually whether we should be focusing on well-being being a kind of distinct positive outcome on its own. So I don't know who put that point about academic results, and I'd love to hear if anybody's got any other thoughts on that academic versus well-being.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I just very briefly, I would just say, I think there's quite an academic literature that demonstrates that when a person or a child is emotionally stable, there's a far better chance of them being able to focus and concentrate and attend to academic work and thus perform better. So I do think there's quite a literature that demonstrates that. So I think it would probably be false to separate the two, although sometimes when you measure, you've got to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, completely. There's definitely a really clear link there. So I guess my question is whether or not it's necessary to prove that your wellbeing support is impacting on the academic stuff as well, when actually I think we probably have a kind of common understanding that that link already exists. And so is it enough to say, well, this student has kind of better well-being, is better supported, kind of full stop? Do we need to do that, add on that extra bit about academic? I think somebody else was going to jump in on that point as well.
If we're going to actively engage schools, then it needs to be linked back to academic attainment to prove the point. I think, given that's majority, as I understand it, where we're delivering, and that body of work to evidence that is already out there to do that, but it's getting, you know, SLTs, going back to that original point that we have to have, that I think Joe made, you know, you have to get SLTs on board. They're already so squeezed, you know, that language is going to speak to them. And, you know, I suppose in a perfect world, well-being would stand on its own as, you know, well-being for well-being's sake, as opposed to being linked to academic attainment. However, the academic attainment would feed back into that kind of loop of confidence and, you know, breaking cycles of poverty and, you know, general greater life fulfillment going forward. Sorry to jump in there. I'm conscious I'm not able to access the Jamboard, so I've been dropping my comments into the chat box there.
Yeah, I saw your comment. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, and I think it is, I agree, I think with what everyone said in terms of, unfortunately, the way schools, you know, with roles, league tables and whatnot, like if you don't talk the language of attainment and you don't talk the language of sort of cost reduction, a lot of the time it's quite hard to get the sort of route into schools. However, because I know, yeah, in a perfect world, it wouldn't be like that, but I do agree, I think. And there's a lot of literature, I do think, especially in America, around sort of social and emotional learning, mental health support and the impact that can have. But also, I think for me, we talk about young people sort of at risk of exclusion, and the link between sort of exclusion, mental health, and sort of longer term sort of disadvantage is really, really pronounced on a sort of national level. And I think, yeah, it's really important that we work together as, you know, different organizations, but also as, you know, collectively to, you know, make sure that sort of wellbeing support and mental health support is at, you know, the forefront. I think the work that Be Well are doing in Manchester is really, really, I don't know if anyone's aware of them. BEE Well. They've been sort of doing a measure of all 10-year Manchester around well-being, and they're sort of going to take that evidence to government, to Ofsted, and hopefully sort of integrate it into the way we assess schools. You know, how happy are your children? How yes, Charlotte, there we are. Yeah, you got the plug there. Be Well for free. So yeah, no, I really admire the work that you're doing in Manchester. It's definitely amazing. But yeah, please, anyone else? Oh, hey Ben. Hi Ben, long time, mate.
Yes, Joe, nice to see you. Just want to think about a little different perspective on the well-being thing. I think it's really important that well-being for me is we kind of change the narrative on it. That is, especially off the back of the COVID, that this is something that's vitally important to young people in their future in its own right. And if we sell it to schools through the lens of attainment, are we not reinforcing this attainment is everything, and you could do well-being to help this side here? I understand that we will stretch for money and time and we need to get into the schools, but surely there's some value in the kind of collective power of things like the FEA to be like, yeah, you've slammed kids with attainment for your whole time and they're still mash up, so let's think about something a little bit different here for its own sake. Is like that.
I feel like I've spoken a lot, so I don't know, Sophie, do you want to take this one, or Charlotte?
Yeah, I think that's a really insightful point, Ben, and I think you've put more articulately what I was maybe getting at, and I completely agree. I think maybe Ellie made the point. It's a difficult, if we were starting from scratch in a perfect world, then yes, I completely agree that would really love well-being to be seen on its own as a really valuable thing. And I guess, yeah, we're in this difficult environment at the moment of like, well, in order to start to make a change, we need to get into schools, we need to, we've got lots of different organisations here with different approaches, but we need to kind of win over the system. And so, yeah, I think it's quite a courageous and challenging thing to go into the education system, and it's really brave to say, actually, we don't measure our impact on academic attainment. That's not a key outcome of what we do. I think, yeah, but I think I'm probably veering more on your side, Ben. I would love to be that kind of brave and courageous organisations and that's maybe where we can kind of come together. That collective action is showing, we have a lot of value for well-being in itself. Yeah, Rosanne, do you want to jump in?
Hi everyone. Yeah, we at Book Trust are, I guess, grappling with the same kinds of challenges around. We are a gifting organisation, but we think that the benefits of reading go way beyond literacy and way beyond attainment. So we're thinking a lot about the kind of measures that are closer to the immediate actions that we're doing. And I'm just thinking, I'm really happy to have conversations with other people about this in the longer term, because we're also really clear about the challenges of attribution of impact in the school setting. But there are lots of different organisations doing lots of different things, and so how we can attribute impact to individual interventions like this really impressive work that you're doing, I think it's a real challenge facing lots of us. So it feels like there's an ongoing dialogue to be had there, and also to flag that one of the challenges that we're having as well is trying to engage with schools to help deliver some of our work, but then also requiring more time with them to evaluate impact. If it is about attainment, that's such a kind of time-consuming thing for the schools. We really want them to be focusing on the kind of behaviour change elements of the work that we're trying to support them to do. It's an ongoing battle, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I can see we're just about to be, I think, kicked out of the